And I always see this is a very important issue, is the two communities in a wonderful country and wonderful society like Canada. We should get together and with the tolerance try to talk and discuss and eliminate this. Because I say, if these two communities can't resolve the issues here, how do we expect them to resolve in the Middle East, where the emotions are high and the feelings are high? So you're right, we have to get together, we have to discuss more and try to find a peaceful solution rather than let the emotions go high. Rubina,
actually, I wanted
yes.
to make a point a little bit separate from this one, in terms of combating Islamophobia. One reason Islamophobia exists is because I think in the minds of some newer immigrants, or some perhaps who have been here for a while, who happen to be Muslim, they still think about going back home. They still think of themselves as Egyptian or Palestinian or Pakistani or whatnot.
But I would say it's true the same for non-Muslims, like Chinese community, the Italian community.
It is.
Everybody is the same in a way.
It is, but I think, I was born and raised here. I think of myself as Canadian first.
Yes.
Canadian Muslim.
Yes.
Okay, my background happens to be Pakistani.
Yeah.
That's where my parents are from. I go there, I enjoy myself when I'm there.
Yeah.
But I'm Canadian first. And I think part of the thing we need to realize that coming to this country is one of, the best countries in the world, in the sense that we're able to practice our religion here better than in our home countries in some cases.
Yes. It's true, but sadly but true.
Sad but true. So I think that we have to start identifying ourselves as Canadians and standing up for our rights as Canadians and making Islam an accepted religion here. This is part of Canadian culture now. Muslims are here to stay.
Yeah.
Islam is part of Canadian culture, and we need to acknowledge that. We need to celebrate that, and we need to invite others to celebrate with us.
Yeah, and it's really explaining Islam to the community and realize it is, what we see on TV, and unfortunately sad, they only pick the violent part. You never see, bringing a show about how the Muslim families, simple Muslim families live back home or whatever. So how do you invite the society to learn more?
I'd like to disagree. I think we have started making some steps. There have been shows, for instance, like Spirit of Islam, in the past and currently. There's also more modern shows like Little Mosque on the Prairie. The format for Little Mosque on the Prairie is a comedy. By having Muslims in Muslim culture in the mainstream media, we are starting to become part of the fabric of Canadian society. I mean, it's a great milestone, I think, in showing Muslims as part of Canadian society, that we're here, we're staying here, and we want to become part and parcel of the Canadian mosaic.
And as a matter of fact, just building on what you said, because that program, I think, was one of the best things that happened to the Muslim community here, because we can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh with the people, and we can be a part of mainstream. But what you said earlier, and when Ashraf commented on that everybody else does that too, that is also the kind of sometime an impression, a perception, although everybody is doing something. But if in the mainstream we are perceived of that it's only the Muslim community which is doing that, and that can be our own impression too, it's all right. We are entitled to having an incorrect impression as much as everybody else does. But the fact is that before this becomes institutionalized, we should do something about it. Because once it becomes institutionalized, then all kind of other factors come into it. That's where the role of law enforcement agency, for example.
Yes.
If issue becomes institutionalized, then police looks at quote-unquote Muslims a different way. Although I still don't know how to find out somebody who is a Muslim, because there is no way that a Muslim has to look like a Muslim from another person. There's no way to identify whether you're a Muslim or not, unless people trivialize these things and just think that Islam only means a long beard and a big turban and a hijab and a burqa. Those are not necessarily the main things, important things in Islam. The important thing is when you get established as a respectful and respected community.
I think the other thing that we need to do as Muslims living in the West is we have to stop living with this siege mentality. we need to become part of the community in all aspects, not just lawyers, doctors, engineers, right?
Yeah.
The tripod of Muslim careers. We need to get into the media. We need to get into journalism. We need to get into law enforcement, become police officers, become firemen, become government officials. These are things, volunteer, and not just for Muslim causes, because we need to volunteer for mainstream causes that support our values and beliefs. And there's many out there.
Okay, so we're dealing, what should we do as a community? But how do we combat Islamophobia in general? So yes, us as a Muslim community,
it's
has a long way to go.
It's very simple, Ashraf. It's very simple. If we become
it's so
the
simple,
model...
I
tell you what, because the Islamic quote-unquote leadership, if you really look at them, you know what is happening? They're the ones who are polarizing it. On the one hand, there are those people who just in the name of whatever modernity, they think that their duty is to humiliate and embarrass Muslims who are practicing Muslims.
Yeah.
On the other hand, practicing Muslims leadership has almost gone to those fundamentalists who would even say that do not invite a Jew or a Christian to your house and do not talk to them. This is not Muslims living in Canada. At least I don't know.
It's not even Islam. Has nothing to do with Islam.
All we have to do is, we have to, like Rubina said, be a model for everybody, including ourselves, including mainstream. We have to teach our children that it is good to meet other members of the community, invite them to your home, open your mosque.
Does that mean teaching them the true Islam?
No,
because that's what, in my mind, that's what true Islam is.
We're not talking about proselytizing.
That's what true Islam is the tolerance and love of others regardless who they are. And that's what I see the message of Islam is. Honestly.
The other thing is, I wanted to make 2 points. We need to do 2 things. There's push factors and pull factors.
Okay.
One, Muslims need to change themselves. Okay? They need to realize we're Canadians, we're Muslims, and we need to change ourselves. We need to adapt. The other thing is we need to change Canadian society to be more accepting. How are we going to do that? We can't force people to change, so we make people want to change. And that's the way you
become a model.
And out of fairness, I feel it's a great society. The Canadian society is a wonderful society. People are tolerant and they're open-minded, and yes, it is our responsibility to put the message out.
And if Muslims cannot live in this society as practicing model behavioring Muslims, I can assure you then they cannot live anywhere else. Because if what is happening in Muslim countries, I will never hold that as a model behavior, because there the tenets of Islam which are most important, like honesty, like lack of corruption, like just doing the deed for which you were hired, very few people live up to that model.
And these are actually Canadian principles, so we should be proud. We should be proud to be living here in a country that upholds Islamic values and principles.
All their energy is spent on Salman Rushdie, on cartoons, on burning each other, rather than raising a voice which people can understand. And that is where I think, when I say it's simple, that's when you and I, Rubina, and people like us, we can make a tremendous difference.
We're running out of time. This is a great topic. I'm sure there's a lot more to discuss. I'd like to thank you both for your input, and inshallah in the future we'll discuss it more. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.